Hello, dear viewers. Welcome to, I guess, the first episode of my series on Lamentations of the Flame Princess. Um, this channel's rather new, so the concept behind it is I'm going to play games, I'm going to record myself playing these games, and then I'm going to record myself talking about these games. If that interests you, and I hope it does, click like, subscribe, blah, blah, blah. And by all means, yell at me in the comments section if you think I'm doing something wrong or I'm completely off base, But but yeah, Lamentations of the Flame Princess. I'm currently running a game. You can see the link in my channel, Lamentations of Elemental Evil. We just had our first episode. The second one will be uh, recorded this upcoming Thursday and every Thursday thereafter. Um, but today I'm going to talk about character creation and Lamentations of the Flame Princess and why I like it. It is one of my it is my favorite of the I guess retro clones out there. I don't know if it would constitute a retro clone. There's I got in a little bit of trouble a little while back when I said James Raggi based this game off of Beckme, and then another individual told me no, it was BX, and then another individual say no, it's Beckme. Uh, at the end of the day, I think the fact that there's some controversy over exactly what original game LOTFP was based off of tells you it's a game in and of itself. And it's, in my opinion, one of the better ones. It is the better one. And I guess in some weird way, this video series is not going to just introduce you to the game. It's going to be an argument for why I think you should buy the game. And before I jump ahead here, actually, that image was created by Midjourney, the AI bot, when I typed in Lamentations of the Flame Princess. I think that's really badass. Um, okay, so what is it? It's weird horror fantasy role playing. It's not anything that came before. It is designed to be challenging, and the default setting that James Raggi uses is the 17th century Europe, which sort of helps set the tone of how difficult life will be uh, in terms of mundane existences for the player's characters. But then when the horror and weirdness happens, it really pops and jumps out at the players. And I think that's great. Certainly, you don't need to play 17th century Europe. There are plenty of setting books out there that are more traditional dark fantasy. I shouldn't say traditional, but dark fantasy. Um, there are no monster manuals that I'm aware of, and I have a pretty decent collection. The only one I could think of is the Random Esoteric Creature Generator by James Edward Raggi IV, our intrepid creator of this wonderful game. It's literally just a random generator, and you're going to create creatures that your players have never faced before, and I think that helps with the weird horror concept and aspect of the game. I think we've all been there as game masters where you have a neat encounter set up using goblins, for example, and the goblins jump out. The players walked right into that trap, right? The goblins jump out, and the players are just sort of like, oh, well, they're goblins. We fought them before in another campaign. We know they're easy, and that tension that you really wanted is gone. Not so here, folks. You're going to have some really crazy, random stuff that is truly horrific and challenging, and I think that's a strength, one of the many strengths of Lamentations. Generally speaking, the products are high quality. They just are. I mean, 9 times out of 10, the book is going to be written well. You're going to have a really interesting adventure to play, uh, and it's going to challenge your players. Now, certainly, Lamentations has a reputation for being somewhat lethal. I I'd have to say that it's earned, but it's not. It's definitely not a meat grinder. Um, um, Creative, thoughtful players will be able to survive these adventures. And just one last point. I think the art's awesome. I'm not an art guy, but maybe I'll have a video just talking about the artists that have contributed because I just think it's what drew me into Lamentations was the art. When I got into the game D&D all those years ago, it was the art that drew me in, and I think we can all. I think it's safe to say the art coming from Wizards of the Coast for the past decade, maybe 2 decades, hasn't been all that inspiring. Um, I look at art from Lamentations and I don't know, it just makes me want to play. So, but let's get into character creation. So it's pretty standard 3d6 down the line. There's no mechanic for roll 4d6, drop the lowest, yada yada yada. No, it's 3d6 down the line, and you're allowed to swap one ability score with another. If you really want that 15 in your strength score, strength ability score, you can swap it with your constitution or wisdom or something. But what I think sort of softens the blow a bit, because we all know the players don't want to have that terrible character with the crappy ability scores. What softens the blow is the question, is your character suitable? That sort of closes out this section of the book. Um, Basically, you take all the modifiers that your rolls generated and add them together. If the net modifier is less than 0, it's not a suitable character and you can start over. So, for example, if you rolled two sixes, a 12, a 10, a 14, and a 3, your net is going to be a -4. You could just re-roll that character. Okay. I think that's a very fair way to handling the 3d6 down the line, as opposed to all these house rules that we've seen over the years address this issue with ability score generation. The one thing I did want to mention, though, and I don't want to be accused of reading too deeply into this, but I really like how the ability scores are set up. They're done in alphabetical order, and I think it sends a subtle but very powerful message to the players. In prior iterations of the world's most popular role playing game, typically ability scores were listed as strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, charisma, in that order. So the first three are physical stats, the next three are mental stats, and the first three are sort of like sending the message that it's primary. It's this is going to be a combat game, folks. You're going to be fighting monsters, and it's going to be wonderful. And certainly the game was developed from a tabletop war game, so I guess that makes sense. Uh, and certainly the latest iterations of the world's most popular role-playing game have essentially become nothing more than grid combat anyway. What I like about this is that there is charisma's first, and it sort of undermines that idea that combat's going to help you win the day. What I see here is a real subtle, I guess, prompt. Like, your ability scores aren't going to matter much. This is going to be about you, the player, overcoming whatever obstacle is headed your way when you sit down at the table. And I really like this. Again, I don't want, maybe James was just like, you know, alphabetical order makes sense. Maybe that's all he thought about. But I think even if it was a weird coincidence, I think it sends a really powerful message. Like, this is not going to be a combat game per se. Um, so I like that. I like that a lot. Um, I'm not going to go into character classes right now. Um, I am going to save that for another video. So we'll get there. But the section on determining hit points has a really nice mechanic that I think, again, sort of mollifies players who may be turned off by the OSR a bit. No one likes to roll up a fighter with 1 hit point. I don't mind, to be completely honest. I think it turns my heroic fighter into a sniveling coward, and to me that's emergent story. And I'm gonna roll with it. But let's face it, 9 times out of 10 players are gonna hate that. So there is a game mechanic here where you roll the hit dice at first level and add any Constitution modifiers. And if your roll plus Constitution modifier does not exceed the hit point minimum at first level, you start with that minimum hit point. However, every level thereafter, you're rolling. So if you roll a 1 at second level, well, you only got one more hit point. Um, what I find interesting, and I want to highlight, and we'll be getting to this in later videos, the fighter starts out with 8 hit points. And that ties into something that I think Lamentations does very well. And that is number 4 down here, roll class protection, roll protection. Um, the fighter fights. That's their job. Okay, they need to be successful at that job. So at first level, the fighter who's going to be taking a brunt of damage as the meat shield, is given a fighting chance. No pun intended, or maybe it was intended. I don't know, but yeah. So that's something I really like here, and I'm going to back up about this sort of class protection, and kind of talk a little bit about what characters are in Lamentations. And I did write some blog posts on this, so there'll be links down below. But Lamentations, when I read a Lamentations game, I'm not seeing, you know, a fighter, or I'm sorry, a farmer picking up a sword and diving into a dungeon filled with howling horrors. That's not, no sane person does that. And James Raggi seems to strongly suggest this in the referee guide that is free and available at the LOTFP website, and everyone should read it. I'll probably do a review of it at some point. Um, you're adventurers. Your characters are adventurers. That's their new profession. Um, and as such, their skills that they must acquire to be successful in that profession. So all classes get that +1 to attack, including the magic user. The magic user gets that too. Everyone gets it. Why? Because adventurers need to know how to defend themselves when diving into these dark places or getting into a fight at a bar. However, the fighter is the only one who improves. Why? Because that's what the fighter does. The fighter specializes in war and military combat, right? Um, in later videos, I'll talk about the common adventuring skills that the specialist specializes in. But every character class, including the magic user and the cleric, can pick a lock. They just have a 1 in 6 chance of doing it. Why? Well, it's a skill that adventurers should have. They just might not be specializing in it. And that's where we come down to the class protection. Fighters fight, specialists deal with the special actions that need to be taken to acquire the treasure or get to the next room in the dungeon. Magic users do the magic stuff, and clerics do the cleric stuff. I think that is just great. I think a lot of other editions of the game have allowed too much class bleed, which kind of waters down the uniqueness of these character classes. And certainly, uh, you know, it's gotten worse over the years. I recall in the second edition Dungeon Master's Guide, they actually warn you from making a character class um, too powerful that can do everything. And unfortunately, the last couple editions of the world's most popular role-playing game seems to have decided not to heed that advice. Um, yeah. So anyway, Lamentations understands that, and if you want a multi-class type character, I think that's what the demi-humans are. The elf. Well, I'll talk about those in a later video. Um, Okay, so saving throws, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on. I'm just going to note that um, Lamentations makes them clearly defined in what they do, and broadens them enough so you really know when to use them as categories. So like save versus paralyze, that's any effect in which the victim is unable to move. Versus poison, which is when hit points are irrelevant. I really like that. Just that clearly states it. And the result is unconsciousness or death. Breath weapon is area effects. It's not just a dragon's breath. In fact, there's unless someone decides to make a dragon, you're probably not going to fight dragons in Lamentations of the Flame Princess. And then, of course, magical device and just magic. Wisdom bonuses apply to magic saves. By the way, um, and I should actually state, going back to the ability scores, strength only applies to attack rolls, not to damage. Same thing with dexterity for missile weapons; it doesn't apply to damage. But yeah, that's saving throws. It's clearly stated, and I think that's great. Alignment. All right. So, for some reason, no one likes alignment, or very few people do. I'm one of them. I think alignment's important, and I think it's necessary for a coherent world building, for your world building. But no one seems to like it. Uh, James seems to understand that there an improper understanding of what alignment uh, is really what is driving everyone hating on alignment. And so he actually states that alignment has no bearing on your character's personality, belief system, or how they're going to act in certain situations. All alignment is whether, if you're lawful, you believe that there's, you know, an order to the universe and that there's some driving goal to it all, right? And chaos is the opposite. It's chaos. There's no reason for any of it. Um, and I like that. And he states in the rule book, alignment really is just about magical effects that will affect law or chaos or neutral characters, and that's it. This is such a succinct and nicely stated alignment system that it convinced me that the 9-part alignment system adopted by Gary Gygax, lawful evil, neutral good, so on and so forth, is just unnecessary. This is, in my opinion, all you need: lawful, neutral, and chaotic. That's it. What is very interesting is that clerics have to be lawful, magic users and elves have to be chaotic. And this goes into the role magic plays in Lamentations of the Flame Princess. I'm probably going to do that topic last because it's complicated from a philosophical standpoint. Um, but I think it makes perfect sense, especially when you sort of adopt this worldview, or excuse me, the default setting of 17th century Europe. The clergy believe there is a grand plan derived by the Christian God or the Muslim God, etc., etc., and therefore there's an order to the universe, and there you have it. You're lawful. You might be a bad cleric, you might be a dastardly cleric, but you believe in an order to it all. Magic users and elves, on the other hand, they're wielding magic, trying to alter reality for themselves, and the powers that they gain, maybe through dark means, cavorting with dark powers and demons and devils and whatnot, uh, lends to this idea that there is no order to any of it. And I think that's a really just awesome thing to add to the game. That's, in fact, the moment I read this is the moment I realized that my homebrew world that I was running in 5th edition needed to be converted to Lamentations. I was like, this is exactly what I want. So anyway, that's alignment. Okay, real quick, starting possessions. Silver pieces is the I guess standard. It doesn't use a gold standard. Everyone starts with 3d6. What I really like is the prices and availability of certain items are split into 2 columns, city and rural. That really helps the DM, excuse me, I should say referee, uh, answer the question, well, can I find this item that I'm looking for in this little village, right? And the item lists are actually printed on the inside of the book cover for easy access. I like that too. Um, when you're generating your character, however, you use whichever's cheapest. So it doesn't matter. You can start with it if you can afford it. I don't want to get too in depth with the weapons and armor and firearms because I'll probably address that periodically in other videos like combat and whatnot. But he doesn't have exhaustive weapon and armor lists, just some basic ones for like categorically speaking, just to list them that way. So you have great weapons, medium weapons, small and minor weapons. Great weapons do D10 damage, medium or D8, small or D6, minor D4. Um, and then some weapons have armor adjustments, like a rapier. It's going to have a problem fighting someone who's wearing heavier armor. I think it's over armor class 15. Whereas like a crossbow bolt will ignore the first two uh, points of armor class because of the force of the crossbow. And firearms, that ignores the first five, which I think is wonderful. It adds a little I guess some rules for your players to consider when developing characters and coming up with combat tactics and whatnot without burdening the game with crunch. There are firearms. They're in the back of the book, and they could probably have their own video as well, because they there was some great pains to make firearms historically accurate. Not all arquebuses are going to be the same, which is really neat. So, but yeah, that is it. I guess I will work on doing character classes next week. And like I said, we're just going to kind of go through this as I go through this campaign. As the campaign completes certain modules or touches upon certain supplements that I use in the campaign, I will make videos about those supplements and those modules to let you know what I think about them, how I use them, why I did what I did, and whether or not you should buy them. I mean, I think that's really what we're all, you know, watching these videos for, is like, because spending our hard-earned money, there's a lot of crap out there, and I guarantee you, if you buy Lamentations of the Flame Princess, you're going to be pleasantly surprised, if not ecstatic, that you picked up the game, because it's just a wonderful, wonderful game. So, thank you, dear viewers. Links to my blog and links to the Lamentations of the Flame Princess webpage will be down below. If you're into actual plays or demos, take a look at my Lamentations of Elemental Evil campaign. And then the next couple of months, I'll start running one-shots, probably for Halloween. If you're interested, stay tuned and certainly reach out if you want to join. You're all more than welcome. All right, take it easy.